What if the deepest wounds we carry leave no visible scars? What if our minds, just like our bodies, remember every shock, every loss, every scream in the night, silently, secretly, shaping who we become? This is the story of trauma, not just in war zones or hospitals, but in childhood bedrooms, ancient battlefields, and the back corners of the mind. Join us as we trace the hidden history of trauma through science, war, myth, and psychoanalysis, guided by the thinkers who first dared to look beneath the surface. Don't forget to subscribe. The year is 1885. A young neurologist named Sigmund Freud travels to Paris to study under the famed Dr. Jean-Martin Charcot, a man treating women suffering from strange, unexplained symptoms: paralysis, convulsions, memory loss. What Freud observed would change everything. These women weren't injured. Their bodies were fine. But something deeper, something buried, was broken. Freud returned to Vienna and began developing what he called psychoanalysis. And central to this theory was trauma. He believed that painful experiences, especially in childhood, didn't just vanish. They were repressed, pushed deep into the unconscious, only to return later as neuroses, anxiety, depression, and irrational fears. One of Freud's famous early cases, Anna O., a young woman suffering from physical symptoms with no physical cause, revealed that speaking about her traumatic memories seemed to release the symptoms. Freud called it the talking cure. It was revolutionary. Trauma, he believed, wasn't just something that happened. It was something that could be forgotten, but not gone. But Freud wasn't alone. Across the border in France, another psychologist, Pierre Janet, was digging even deeper into the mystery of trauma. And what he found was terrifying. Janet studied patients whose traumatic experiences had split their consciousness. He called this dissociation. Imagine living your life, while part of you is stuck in another moment. A moment of terror, violence, or shame. A part that never moved on, never healed, never grew. Janet described how traumatic memories don't behave like regular memories. They return suddenly, like ghosts. They haunt the body, not just the mind. He called these fixed ideas, psychic fragments lodged in the nervous system. A soldier ducking under a table at the sound of fireworks. A woman freezing when she hears footsteps in the dark. These weren't just symptoms. They were memories trying to be remembered. Though Freud became more famous, modern trauma researchers now acknowledge that Janet may have understood trauma's true nature better than anyone in his time. Then came the Great War. World War I, 1914 to 1918, unleashed horrors on a scale humanity had never seen. Millions dead, millions more shattered. And for the first time, doctors began to notice a strange epidemic among returning soldiers. They weren't physically wounded, yet they trembled, stuttered, screamed in their sleep, or stood frozen in catatonic silence. They called it shell shock, believing it was caused by the concussive force of explosions. But soon, it became clear. Some of these men had never even been near a shell blast. Their injuries were psychological. British psychiatrist W.H.R. Rivers, working at Craiglockhart War Hospital, treated famous poet soldiers like Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen. Rivers brought back Freud's talking cure, but with empathy, not interpretation. For the first time, war trauma was being acknowledged as real. Not cowardice, not weakness, but the mind's response to horror. Shell shock was the seed of what we now call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Freud's most famous disciple, Carl Gustav Jung, would later break away, but not from trauma. For Jung, trauma wasn't just personal, it was archetypal. He believed that trauma could awaken ancient patterns within us, deep symbolic forces embedded in the collective unconscious. In every survivor, Jung saw the archetypes of mythology: the wounded healer, the hero, the shadow. Rather than suppress trauma, Jung encouraged its integration. He believed suffering had meaning, not just pathology, but transformation. Jung asked, "What is trying to be born through this pain?" To him, trauma was not just a break in the psyche, it was a call to wholeness. But the understanding of trauma didn't begin in the 19th century. Let us go further back, to the ancient world. In the 5th century BCE, the Greek historian Herodotus wrote of a soldier who went blind after witnessing the violent death of his comrade. There was no physical injury. His eyes worked, but he could not see. Today, we might call it conversion disorder, the body shutting down as a response to unbearable psychic shock. Even the father of Western medicine, Hippocrates, recognized the effects of war and suffering on the soul. He believed emotional imbalance could come from physical events, and that illness could begin in the mind. And then, there were the Stoics. Long before psychology, the Stoic philosophers of Rome, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, pondered the problem of human suffering. They did not use the word trauma, but they spoke of something eerily close. Epictetus, once a slave, taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. Suffering, he said, was not what happened, but what we believed about what happened. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote nightly about pain, fear, and grief, his personal therapy in the pages of Meditations. These weren't just reflections, they were a form of cognitive restructuring. In modern psychology, we call it CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Even Epicurus, who preached pleasure, warned that freedom from fear was the key to peace, and fear often comes from memory. So what do we learn when we follow the thread of trauma across time? That trauma is not new. What's new is our understanding of it. From Freud's repression and talking cure, to Janet's dissociation and memory fragmentation, to the screams of shell-shocked soldiers, to Jung's healing through myth, to ancient Stoics mastering emotion through philosophy, each thinker, each moment, brought us closer to the truth. That trauma is not weakness. It is not madness. It is the brain's way of surviving what the heart cannot bear. Today, with the help of neuroscience, somatic therapy, and trauma-informed care, we are finally beginning to see trauma not as a disorder, but as a deeply human response to overwhelming events. And maybe, just maybe, through that understanding, we can begin to heal. If you've ever felt broken by something you couldn't explain, if you've ever been haunted by a moment that should be gone but isn't, you are not alone. Your pain is valid, your story matters, and healing begins with understanding. Thank you for watching. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment with your thoughts or story. Because in the end, it's not just about trauma, it's about hope.